Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Adobe Live. My name is Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe, and I hope you're all doing well on this Friday afternoon. I hope you're all recovered from Adobe Max. I certainly am not. I'm still catching up on sessions and just soaking in all the amazing things that we released over the past few days. It's been a lot, but it's been fun, and a big thank you to everyone who tuned into my sessions, my keynote, all that fun stuff. Thank you. Before we dive into things, I want to say a big hello to Julia and Jack and Wade and Philip and Ariana and Dot Designs and Cheryl Howard. Fantastic last name, by the way. Constance and Unicorn and Jelena and everyone else tuning in. If you are tuning in, let me know in the chat who you are and where you're tuning in from. If you're watching this on Twitter and you do want to hang out, chat with everyone else, head over to behance.net/Adobe Live. Or if you just want to hang out on Twitter and just watch, you're more than welcome to do so. Hopefully the stream over there is doing okay. So yeah, Adobe Max, it was a lot. It was a very new experience this year. It was all online, all free. We had over 500,000 people register, which is amazing. And we're able to spread our knowledge to a lot more people. So thank you again to everyone who has joined. A lot of people in the chat saying Max was amazing this year. Sky enjoyed all of the sessions, including the international ones. Yeah, that was cool too. I was watching actually one of the Japanese sessions on Adobe XD. I forget his name, I apologize. I'll actually show his stuff in a second, but he's doing some amazing things with 3D Transform that you're gonna see in just a few moments. So let's hop over to my screen and let's dive into things. So if you missed the news, I don't know what rock you're under, but we released a lot of cool stuff at Adobe Max. And Mallory says, I felt fortunate to go to Max Online. Yeah, it's, again, new experience and available to everyone, which was great. Munir from Istanbul, Vincent from Alabama. Great to see everyone in the chat. All right, so here's a quick blog post you can go to. You can find it on Adobe XD's Twitter account. But a very quick recap of some of the things that we released. 3D Transforms. Need I say more? Some of you may have seen my video on YouTube or Let's XD. I'm going to dive really deep into 3D Transforms during today's masterclass and probably every masterclass in existence from here on out, right? So 3D Transforms, wonderful feature. We've got Creative Cloud libraries now integrated directly into Adobe XD. I will show you that. Mallory says, unbelievable that it was free, right? Completely free. I don't even know how many hours of content, but there were over 350 sessions. A lot of amazing, just like it just went on forever. I still have to catch up on everything. Just crazy. So Creative Cloud libraries directly integrated in XD. We have a new extension. I don't understand any of the development stuff, but Damien Borba and his team did an amazing job at this Visual Studio Code extension. So if you're a developer, you can access your Creative Cloud libraries directly in Visual Studio Code. You can create these packages, and letsxd.com/vscode, all the information is there as well. Co-editing out of beta now, and there's more stuff coming in that area. New plugins, we've got auto height text, which is great. Nested components has been basically completely redone, and I'm going to show you a little bit of that, and component support in design specs, which is great. All right, letsxd.com/3D. You can get all the information about 3D Transforms there. We've got a sample file, a video, some more sample files, and if you want to just read along, you can do that as well. So Russian XD says, hope 3D Function will work with interactions and hover effects soon. Me too. I know the team is looking very deep into that. It's a little bit of a challenge, a little bit more of a challenge than the 3D functionality that exists right now. So the team is looking very seriously at bringing 3D Transforms to states for hover effects and things like that. So stay tuned. And I do want to show you a few things. So I'll show you that in a second, but I was having a lot of fun with 3D Transforms. I don't know why I do these things at like 12 o'clock at night, but I do. This one was a lot of fun to do. I don't know if anyone's a Hearthstone player, but I recreated the card pack opening experience using 3D Transforms, which was a challenge, but a lot of fun too, right? There's so much you can do in the world of like UI design, game design. And I did mention, let me see, here it is. So Usamu Sato, he created this, and just like, he did it so quickly too. These experiences that you can just create using 3D transforms is just going to change the way we all design in Adobe XD, which is wonderful, right? All right, so enough of that. Let me hop over to Adobe XD, and we are going to get designing. We're going to dive into some of the new experiences. Philip is saying I have a weird overlaying the edge of my left panel after the update. I haven't seen that personally, but send a tweet to Adobe Care and they will take a look at it. All right, the first feature I want to kind of showcase quickly is auto height text. And this goes great with stacks, which we released, I think, in the June timeframe. This year has been it's been a year, so I don't remember exactly. I'm pretty sure it was June, which was supposed to be Adobe Max Europe, but because of 2020, we had to not do Adobe Max Europe. But we released a big update then, stacks and scroll groups, and auto height text is now available. So let me go ahead and very quickly create a stack, right? And many of you may have seen this. So I'm gonna grab this layer right here. I'm gonna grab this layer. I'm just gonna grab all these layers, right? And I wanna put them all into a group. Command and Control G, boop, there we go. And this I'll just call info. And then over here to the right within our properties inspector, we've got our stack option. I'm gonna turn this on. It's gonna define it as a vertical stack because the layers inside of that group are laid out top to bottom vertically, right? And as many of you may know, we can just dive in here and just start moving things around. We can also turn this into a stack. So now we have a stack in a stack, right? I can just move these objects around. So stacking is great. Been in XD for a few months. But where things got a little bit strange is when you were dealing with text that included additional lines. So I have this text here, right? And maybe, for example, let me actually change this back to what it used to be. I might want to put on, I'm just going to write a few things. If you were feeling basic, right? Grab the vanilla cappuccino. So previously, this was known as point text. And we also had what was called area text, where we can define the width and the height of our text. And we still have that, but it's called fixed size right now, right? So you'd be able to do this, right? But you had this problem that kind of happened, right? You got to the end of the line and things kind of got hidden. Now, of course, you could have dived in and just double clicked and then made it larger. Not a huge deal, right? But now what we have is we have what's called auto width and auto height text. So I'm going to go ahead and press that, and there we go. It automatically defined, so the width was defined by us, right? So we can just kind of drag this around. But now, let me actually delete the word cappuccino. As you get to the end of a line, it automatically resizes that text box going down the artboard. And because this text box is inside of a stack, it also pushed all the layers down below, which is wonderful. It's going to save you a ton of time. So auto width, auto height, and fixed size, I believe that's what it's called. Fixed size. 3 new text options in Adobe XD, especially when you're using stacks. It's going to change the game quite a bit. All right, let's take a quick look at libraries. I'm going to dive deeper into libraries in another masterclass, but over to the left, we've got our plugins panel, we've got our layers panel, which we're in right now, and we have what used to be called the assets panel. Now it's the libraries panel. And you're probably wondering, well, why is it called the libraries panel? When I open it, it looks about the same, right? You've got your colors, you've got your character styles, you've got your components, all that fun stuff. But now you might notice at the very top left, you've got this link back to your libraries. And this shows you all of your Creative Cloud libraries. And I can dive into any of these and just start accessing things that are in my library. So here's a library that I've already shared from Adobe XD. I can access all those. And it doesn't have to be an Adobe XD doc or library. You can access anything, right? So if you've loaded in, let's say, a material design library, like this one here, you've got access to everything, right? You might also want to load in or save in your libraries icons, for example. So let's go ahead and look up Font Awesome icons. I've got all these icons and I can search, let's say, happy. Okay, maybe there's no happy ones. Let's say drink, right? Maybe there's no drink ones. I don't know what icons are in this library. Link, maybe. Link. There we go. We've got some link icons, right? And what's really cool is up here, I can go ahead and filter by graphics. So if you have multiple things up there, you can also sort by date modified and name. And you can also choose, to view it various different ways, right? So you've got all your graphics up there, which is great. So you have a little bit of filtering options as well. And then I had something in the search bar, but you can also view by groups. So if you created groups in your Creative Cloud libraries, now you have a little bit of organization. The team's working on more organization. I know a lot of people have been asking that. When's organization coming to components and things like that? It's in the works. But we've got now, we have different groups that were created inside of the Creative Cloud library, solid, regular icons, and that sort of stuff, right? So libraries is gonna be great in Adobe XD. If you wanna publish your library, hit that icon at the top, and you can choose which libraries you see in your libraries panel, just like this. So, I have a few of them not displayed. You can publish your library, share it with people, and it's a good time, right? All right. So now probably what everyone wants to see, 3D transforms in Adobe XD. Probably one of my favorite features that we've shipped in quite a while. I mean, they're all great, but this one's really going to change the game. So you may have seen this particular example. Then we're going to really start diving into this augmented reality experience that we're going to be building from scratch. So over here, I have a presentation artboard, and I may want to start displaying what this great looking coffee application might look like. Now I've already gone ahead and turned this whole screen into a component. You might be asking, well, why are you doing that? And the short answer is because I want to keep my presentation up to date when my design changes. The last thing I want to do is make a change on this artboard and then have to go over here and make a change here. It might be using this design on many artboards. I don't really want to make that change over and over again. So converting this into a component is going to help tremendously. And with the updates to nested components, it's going to make my life so much easier. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this component from this artboard, hop over here, and I've got a few layers. I've got a frame, this simple iPhone or Android device frame, just made up of 2 rectangles. I have also got a mask, and I'm using a mask, and I'm going to paste this component into, just so that I can contain everything inside of this rounded rectangle, right? So I'm going to pop that right about there, and that looks wonderful, right? Of course, I can leave it at this and kind of move on, share this with clients, but I do want to get a little bit fancy with the way this presentation looks, and that's where 3D transforms comes into play. So I do have all of these elements grouped, and if you don't have them grouped, I would recommend popping them into a group just so you can transform everything all at once. Now you're going to notice over to the right within the Properties Inspector, we've got this new 3D transforms icon, and when I turn that on, not only do I have a few new values or text fields inside of the Properties Inspector for rotating along the X and Y axis and controlling Z depth, but I also have this lovely new gizmo on the center of this object, and that will allow me to just rotate this design, right? I can move this up a little bit. I can grab the shadow, move it down so it looks like it's almost floating off of this table, and I also can control the Z depth. So if I grab this little dot in the middle, I can move it back, I can move it forward. So essentially you're almost scaling this object without actually scaling it, which is really cool. It's going to come in handy not just for 3D transforming things, but just for making things bigger or smaller. Now I will note that the background image that I'm using here, I've gone ahead and set the Z depth to -1000. And I did that because if I had it at 0, right, and I just grabbed this object and moved it back a little bit, it's going to intersect because I'm now moving it negative values, right? So just keep that in mind. I know I've expressed to the team that it'd be really cool to be able to set the background of an artboard to a certain image, so you're not really dealing with that intersection. So it's something they're looking into. But for now, keep that in mind. Grab your image, set a negative value for the Z depth, and you'll be able to move things around. Now, if anyone's watching on Behance and you have questions about 3D transforms, throw them in the chat. I am taking a peek from time to time. So this is already looking pretty cool. And as Abdullah said in the chat, looking fancy, right? But I want to get a little more fancy with this. So I'm going to dive into this group. I'm going to grab a rectangle. and I'm going to start drawing one out. Now you're noticing what's happening, right? Not only is a rectangle being drawn out, but it's respecting the 3D transformation. So it's actually creating this shape in 3D, right? Isn't that cool? So I'm gonna go ahead and grab this, move it back a little bit, maybe pull this out a touch and round out the corners. So all of a sudden I'm starting to create this really cool looking, almost like a bevel on the side of this device, right? Let's go ahead and sample this color and just drop it a little bit. And look at that, right? Yeah, Umacorn, now the magic is happening. There we go. Now I've got this 3D looking shape for this device. Look at that. Right? Fancy. Majid says, XD makes my life easier. Indeed it does. But speaking of magic, Umacorn, this is where things get really fancy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this artboard, Command and Control D, and on the first one, I want to reset the transformations. So I'm going to right click and then reset transformations. By the way, copy SVG code, now available in Adobe XD as well. So I'm going to reset the transformations. I'm going to pull back in that bevel that we created. I'm going to pull the shadow up and just move this down a little bit. Maybe, you know what? Maybe I'll just push it back in space a touch. So we've got this phone sitting on this table, a little bit back in space, no 3D transformations, and now we want to kind of transform it into this design right here, right? We've got on the heat, why draw another rectangle behind the phone? Can you not just push out the Z factor of the phone rectangle itself? And I think the reason I'm doing that, if I understand your question correctly, is so that I just have this separate shape that I can use as the bevel and I can control it. So if I rotated this whole phone the other way, right? If I wanted to go this way, I can grab that rectangle like this and push it back on this side and then pull it out on this side. Actually, I'll show you that in a second, right? So let's go back into prototype mode. I'm gonna select the entire artboard and drag this handle from this screen over to this one. And this will allow me to set up a time trigger, which is only available on the artboard level. So I'm gonna select time trigger. We'll give it a little bit of a delay so it doesn't kick off immediately. And then we wanna make sure to do auto animate. If you're new to XD, essentially what's gonna happen is auto animate is gonna look at the differences between these two wired up artboards. So this one here and this one, and it's gonna animate the differences, even the 3D transformations. We'll do ease in and out, and maybe we'll do, let's say, a nice 3 seconds. And let's go ahead and press play at the top. Every time I do that, I get blown away. I've been playing around with this feature for a few months now, and every time something like this happens, it's like, how am I doing this in a 2D application? Now, this way, right? And I'm gonna dive in here, grab that bevel, and go out this way, right? Just like that. Maybe I'll round up the corners a little bit more so it matches. Move this to the center. And now what I can do is I can create one, so let's do this one more time. Look at that, fancy. Now I'm noticing one thing, I just want to make a little bit of a tweak just so it looks not so unrealistic. I'm going to pull this back in just a little bit more. So you know, just at the edge now, I'm going to pull it in a little bit more just so that from here, that's a little bit better. Look at that. All right, let's see. So Hamik is asking, can we use the 3D feature to create 360 degree animation? So the short answer is yes. Let me see if I actually have an example. I do. So, well, you can do sort of. I don't want to give the impression that this is like true 3D like Adobe Dimension, right? But you can do things like this, where you have a card and you might want to flip this card over. I don't want to get too far into this because I will cover this in another session. But you can play around with the Z depth, right? So what I'm going to do here very quickly, I'm going to dive in here, and if you take a look, the front card, I'm going to set the Z depth to 1, and the back card, I'm going to set the Z depth to -1, right? And then on this artboard, basically what I've done is I've rotated the entire group 180 degrees, and I've flipped the Z depth. So front is now -1, and back is now 1. And now if I go ahead and prototype this, I'll do a tap trigger, ease in and out. Let's actually do a snap. And then we'll do 0.6 seconds. So now you can do like a card flip animation. Now I think I messed something up over there, but you get the idea, right? I'll have to, probably next masterclass, we'll dive more into card animations and setting them up from scratch. But yes, you can kind of get away with certain things, but again, it's not true 3D, right? But it kind of lines up with CSS's 3D transform. So kind of makes sense, right? All right, so yeah, Philip's saying, so hard to know about this feature for a month, but you're not allowed to talk. Yeah, I've known about this feature since, when did I last? It's been probably about a year and a half. I remember sitting down at our studio in San Francisco, and one of our engineers sat down beside me. He's like, I need to show you something. And he showed me basically it was his side project, his Anaru. It was a side project he was working on. He's like, look at this. And I'm like, you need to do this, like make this happen. And here it is. It's been happening. All right. So the next example we want to dive into is this augmented reality example. And I believe I actually have it on Dribbble. Now, hopefully okay, it looks like the connection blipped for a second, but yeah. So I want to show you how to create something like this in Adobe XD. Come on, Dribbble, play it, do it, play it. Well, many of you probably, there we go. Right? And I think 3D transforms is going to be massive for prototyping and designing augmented reality experiences like this. And I want to show you how to create this from scratch today. All right. So hopping over here, let's actually go ahead and just create a new artboard on the right over here. We can actually go ahead, let's go big, 1920 by 1080. We're gonna do a nice big artboard. And I'm going to create a rectangle just so that I can contain the image that I'm gonna add into the shape. And if I hop over to Finder, I've got some images here of potential augmented reality experiences. I've been, grabbing some images from Adobe stock on things that we can potentially, fitness applications in augmented reality, for example, mirrors. And hopefully this is giving all of you some ideas. Of course, the kitchen, we're going to use in a moment, another kitchen. We've got some clothes for that mirror experience. So I would love to see what all of you start to come up with. And I've got a daily creative challenge coming up in the not too distant future. Definitely going to be covering augmented reality. All right, so let's grab the kitchen. This is the one here. I'm going to bring this into Adobe XD, and I'll just adjust. I'm going to really zoom this in a little bit. Right? Zoom it on in. It's a great thing about Adobe stock is these images are huge. Gives us a lot of room to work with. All right. Now, what you may have noticed in that example on Dribbble, right, that some of these cards are actually going behind this faucet over here to the right, and also this bowl of oranges. So how do we do that? That's kind of where Photoshop comes into play. And one of the things I love about Adobe XD is that it integrates so well with the Creative Cloud. I can just right click and edit in Photoshop. It's going to pop open Photoshop in just a second. It's a pretty large image, so bear with me. And now I can start just, selecting some of these objects. And this isn't a Photoshop tutorial, but I'm going to zip through this. I'm going to use my object selection tool, select this area here, right? So it's selected, for the most part, a decent job at this faucet and these cups. Let me just do a little bit of a tweak over here, quick selection tool, get rid of some of this stuff, right? We just basically want this faucet and these cups, just like that. It doesn't have to be perfect because the animations will be happening so quickly that if there is a little bit of imperfection, which we're definitely going to get with that bowl of oranges, it should be fine, right? So let's go ahead and copy that, paste it into Adobe XD, and just resize it. And now I have this additional layer of depth that we're going to use. Look at that. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that, very similar to the last example where I set the Z depth of the background image at a negative value, we want to do the same thing as well for this image here. So I'm going to just set it at, let's say, -1000. And then I can just go ahead and resize this. Fancy. Now, it doesn't even look like that faucet has been cut out, but if I move this over to the right or the left, right, it's gonna help us a lot. All right, so next we've got our bowl of oranges. I'm gonna head over here. Let's try the object selection tool one more time. Let's see how well that does with our lovely oranges. Okay, not too bad. Of course, you know, it's difficult with these very fine lines of this wire. So back to the quick selection tool. Let's see how well, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And what we could potentially do is just select this whole entire area and just cut off the side. We can cheat a little bit, right? That looks okay. I think it'll work. Maybe I'll just try to deselect some of this in the middle just so that we can see some, who knows. Okay, copy and hop over here back to XD and paste. And now we've got our lovely oranges. By the way, Command or Control T will turn on or off the transformation gizmo. All right, let's make this a little bit larger. We've got our oranges looking pretty good. I can turn down the opacity a little bit just so I can make sure that everything lines up as it should. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Good enough. You get the idea, right? You all can finesse this into place as much as possible. And it doesn't look good. There we go. That's it. Okay, that'll do. We'll deal with the rest later. Okay, so we've got this all set up. We've got our background image, we've got our fruits, and we've got our faucet over to the right. Now we actually want to start creating some of the cards for the recipe. So I'm going to create one more artboard over here to the right, and we can start creating. And we'll keep this fairly simple, right? I'm going to grab my rectangle, and because these cards are going to be white, I'm going to drop the color of the artboard just a little bit. I'm going to grab my rectangle and draw out the first card, just like that. I'll round out the corners a touch. That looks pretty good. And I'll center this. Turn off the border. I know a lot of you are asking about border defaults and things like that. Something the team is definitely looking into. The team's looking into a lot of things, but personally, I would love to be able to just turn off the border by default, but I understand why it's there. But I'd love the option if anyone from the team is watching, which probably is happening. All right, down at the bottom, I'm gonna drag out a button. Just like that. Maybe I'll round out the corners completely. Let's go ahead and give it a nice pinkish reddish color, just like that. And we'll type out, let's get cooking. For the typeface, let's try Josephine Sans. I've been using quite a bit lately. And since this is a call to action, we'll bold it just, let's say maybe bold. Yeah, I think bold could work. All right, so that looks pretty good right about there. I'm gonna make sure to either group these or turn them into a component. For now, I'll just go ahead and set them as a group. And then maybe at the top, we might want a little bit of a preview of what this exactly, maybe an illustration, for example. So I'm gonna hop over to Finder, where I do have back in this folder here, I've got a bunch of illustrations that I grabbed from Adobe stock. They're actually part of a larger Adobe Illustrator file, which you can bring directly into Adobe XD to grab assets from. But let's start with pancakes are pretty good, right? Who doesn't love a nice stack of pancakes? So I'll pop this somewhere in the center, right at the top. And I do want, let's say, oops, I have the color set to white. That's awkward. There we go. All right, so we've got our title for these pancakes. We might want a little bit of, possibly a little bit of a description. So I'll go down here and group them and enable a stack. It's kind of a little pun on Adobe XD, right? Let's change the color. Something like that. And maybe I'll just drop the weight a little bit. Let's go for semi-bold. All right, so we've got our title. We've got our little bit of a description of what this is. Now down here, we may want a few additional things. We may want some icons to give some very quick information about this recipe. Maybe how many people it's for, how long it'll take. And then we might want some additional images to show off maybe, you know, what your friends are cooking in this kind of realm, right? So I'm gonna grab a rectangle and draw one out just like this. And this will be one of the images. Maybe I'll round to the corners just a touch. Let's go for 24 pixels. That looks pretty good. And we might want to turn this into a repeat grid so we can have additional ones going across this card. So Command and Control R, that's the one. Or you can press the button at the top right-hand corner. Boop. Where's my boop animation? There we go. There's the boop animation. And I'll drag out, let's say, 3 going across, just like this, right? Now, to get content into a repeat grid, Alok is asking, why doesn't XD have GIF support? GIF, video, a lot of different things the team is actively looking into and hoping to get around to. Anytime you bring in things with motion, like GIFs and video, there's the potential that performance could suffer. So when the team does get around to it, they want to make sure that performance does not suffer for obvious reasons, right? So GIF and video support, potentially other things, definitely on the radar. I don't have a time frame for any of that stuff, but definitely something they're looking into. All right, so we've got our gallery of images. Let's hop back over to Finder and let's grab some pancakes. And Ariana says, those pancakes look so good. If you thought those look good, look at this. Like, that's just delicious. So we've got one pancake there. I think I have other ones. Yeah. Now I'm just hungry, right? Is the boop animation made in Adobe XD? I think that one was made in After Effects. So I'll just drag these pancakes into Adobe XD, and there we go. Now, we obviously have a bit of a problem, right? We've got these pancakes kind of floating off of the card, and that could be kind of fun, but we want to contain it so we can scroll during this augmented reality experience. So I'm going to go ahead over in the Properties Inspector and just turn on a horizontal scroll. Boop. I'm going to drag this out a little bit and drag this in to contain it. It snaps really nicely, and if I do go ahead and press play to preview, I can scroll through the pancakes just like that. Beautiful. All right, so I did mention that we might want some icons right up here. I might want to make this a little bit larger too. Push this down a touch just to give me a little bit more room. And then over here, again, we might want some icons. So let's try a plugin, Icons for Design, wonderful plugin. By the way, plugins. We did release some new plugins, and one of them, many of you will be happy to know, a list plugin is now available to create bulleted lists and things like that. It was actually created by an internal team at Adobe. And I know the question you're gonna all ask is, well, if you can create a list plugin, why not just have lists natively in Adobe XD? And that is absolutely planned. But that's part of a much larger project to bring a new text engine to Adobe XD. It wouldn't make sense to just add 1 or 2 things and then have to redo all of that later. So there's a big plan to bring a new text engine to Adobe XD, and lists, I would imagine, would be part of that. But in the meantime, we've got a plugin now. All right, let's go ahead and let's look up clock. All right, that looks pretty good. So we'll have a clock there for maybe how many minutes this might take. I'm gonna make this a little bit larger too. Let's try 45 pixels, maybe 40 pixels. That could work, right? And then maybe how many people. So we might want to look up user or users possibly. That looks pretty good. And let's do height of 45. Oh, no, it was 40, right? 40. There we go. And we might want also maybe how many stars. Maybe there's a rating system. You know what? Well, there's no stars here, so what I can do is I can actually grab my polygon tool, create a polygon just like that. I'll set the corners to 5, and then actually just create a star. Look at that. Fancy. Rounded the corners just a touch. Let's see, we've got over here 3 for the width. Bump that up to 3. Let's sample this color. And there we go. Looking good. All right, so I'm gonna move this over to the side. We've got this over here, looking good. We'll move this in the center. And what I can do is I can select all 3 of these and just make sure they're all aligned really nicely from each other, just like that, all right? Now, underneath, we might want some contextual information on what exactly these things are. So maybe, so maybe a text tool, and this could take, let's say, 15 minutes. just like that. I'll make this a little bit smaller. 24 looks pretty good. Drop the weight to maybe regular. And this was for 2 people. Although if someone made me these pancakes, I would not share with anybody, but that's beside the point. And we'll do 4.5 for the stars, right? All right. Now I do want to make sure to group all this information. Group, and maybe I'll turn on a stack. Now, did you notice what just happened? I covered this in my getting started class, or was it the advanced tips and tricks? I'm not sure. But let me go back for a second. So I went ahead and grouped some of this information, right? And essentially I want to be able to create a stack so I can maybe move this time information maybe over to the right and maybe move the stars to the beginning, right? And I could have gone in and grabbed this and Command and Control G to group it, but XD is actually smarter than you might think, right? So I have this entire group selected with all of this information, and I went ahead and turned on a stack within the Properties Inspector. Send pancakes to Howard, or send the pancakes Howard. Well, maybe you can send the pancakes to me anyway. I read that wrong and I got really excited, and then I read it again and I didn't get as excited. I want pancakes now. So I went ahead and turned on a stack within the Properties Inspector, and XD actually dove into this group and grouped everything for me. So it grouped all the information that was here. I don't know how it knows this stuff, but it just knows it, right? Now I can just kind of move things around. So stacking is kind of smart. It just grab a bunch of objects. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but for the most part, it works really well. Just grab things and move them around. All right. I don't want to waste too much time. We've got our pancakes looking absolutely delicious. I'm going to just make sure everything's spaced out really nicely. And I'm going to group all of these. You know what? I'll group this one. I was going to say you can turn this into a component. You can absolutely do that. But for now, I'm going to call this pancakes. Beautiful. All right, so we've got our pancakes looking pretty good. And now let's go ahead and create another one. So let's try the breakfast sandwich. Breakfast sandwich, just like that. And your face, right? Let's get a little bit fun with this copy. Make it a little bit smaller. Those icons are font awesome. Let's double check. So the star was created in XD, and the clock was feather icons, and the users were also feather icons. But font awesome, you can absolutely use that as well. So we've got our breakfast sandwich, but of course we need some new assets. So back over to Finder, let's grab some sandwiches. Not all these are sandwiches, but you know what? We're gonna run with it. Drag these into XD to replace that repeat grid. Let's change some of this information. Maybe this one takes maybe just 5 minutes, right? And then we'll do, sure, 2 people. Maybe this one's not as good. We'll do 3.5. And make sure to center it. Perfect. Now, this icon at the top with this illustration, Alberto says XD keeps getting better and better. I agree. Let's go ahead and find a sandwich. Just pop it on there. Adjust the scaling just a little bit. That image was a little bit larger than the other one. There we go. All right. And let's go ahead and actually do one more. So I'm going to move these over to the side. And we'll do one more recipe. We will do... Oh, we got to do the pumpkin spice latte, right? Pumpkin spice latte. There we go. The pumpkin spice latte absolutely is a 5-star dish. It's only for one person, probably. One person. And I don't know, 5 minutes, sure, right? There we go. Make sure some of this stuff is still centered. It is, looks great. And let's go ahead and grab some images of coffee to wrap this up. Pop that in there. And then finally, we do need that illustration for the pumpkin spice latte. Pop it in there and adjust the scaling. There we go. So we've gone ahead and created our 3 recipes, right? And maybe one more thing we might want to do is also create maybe a way to get back to the first recipe. So I'm going to grab a an ellipse. That's what it is. Pop this over here. And I'll change the color to, I don't necessarily, do I want to go pinkish red again? Because it might feel like it's too, no, it's because it's not the same action as all the other ones, right? So maybe we'll go like a bluish color, something like that, maybe, right? We'll pull out some saturation, and this is going to be so we can go home. Let's go ahead and call this, ooh, that text color is just not, nope, just not working. That's a bit better. And then we might want a home icon. So back in my icons for design plugin, let's type out home. Let's try awesome. That could work. Change the color to white as well. It's a nice looking icon. There we go. And I'll make sure to group all of this information. All right, so we've got our pancakes. I should probably go ahead and name these properly. We've got our sandwich. And then we've got our pumpkin spice latte. There we go. Brina says, I should play lives more often here. Yeah, these live shows are fantastic. We run them basically all day, every day. And they're free, and they're usually pretty good. Usually. Almost always. All right. Beautiful. All right. Pancakes, but I could have been eating waffles. Waffles are good too. I'm not sure which one I like. Let me know in the chat, maybe with an emoji or just some text. Which do you like better, pancakes or waffles? I know this is a big debate, especially, you know, there's also the taco and burrito debate, but let's stick with pancakes and waffles and see what all of you think. All right. So we've got all of our recipes and we've got our home icon. Now what I might want to do is pop all these into a stack. So I'm going to group these and I'm going to call these recipes, just like that. And I'm going to turn on a stack, which is going to define the stack as horizontal. I can also adjust the spacing in between all of them if I want to. Let's say 48 pixels. And now we have our recipes looking pretty good, right? Lindsay says French toast. That's another good option too. Drizzle some maple syrup on there. We've got waffles and pancakes. Cody popped up. Did someone say pancakes? Eva says pancakes. Umacorn says both. I mean, yeah, right? All right. So we've got our recipes looking pretty good, and maybe so that we can have a flat version of these recipes, we might want to just turn the entire thing into a component. So I'm going to right click, make component, or Command and Control K. It keeps the stack intact, which is wonderful. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate this over to this artboard here. So I have an instance over here. We've got pancakes for sure. Pancakes are easier. Waffles need the mold. Interesting. That's a good point. Unless you get those like Eggo waffles that are frozen, but then it's like frozen waffles. All right. So I've got an instance over here on this artboard. And now I want to start really taking advantage of 3D transforms. So Command and Control T to turn on 3D transforms, or you can pop the icon on within the properties inspector. And now I can rotate this just like this, let's say 8 degrees. And I can push it back in space. Look at that, right? And all of a sudden we've got this really fun looking augmented reality experience. And because we spent a little bit of time in Photoshop extracting some of these elements, we've got them behind the faucet and also the oranges to the left. Isn't that cool? Crepes. Oh, Kyle, that's a good idea too. I'm so hungry right now. I don't have any food around me. I'm so hungry. I'm going to go after this. I'm going to eat some either pancakes or waffles or something. Look what all of you have done to me. All right. So we've got this kind of pushback in space, but we want to really emphasize that one of these recipes is a little bit, or maybe the active recipe, right? And the other ones are kind of inactive. So what I'm going to do, let's start with the pumpkin spice latte. I'm going to dive in here. I'm going to grab this one. And I just remembered that at the moment, we do not support, so I'm going to ungroup the component, right? And I'm just going to pop it into a group. Very good. So at the moment, we do not support 3D transforming objects inside of a component. So keep that in mind. I did forget that, but that is something the team is looking into. But I'm going to just kind of move this forward. Now, what you can also do, let me actually go back, ungroup this, Make sure all of this is inside of group with a stack enabled. There we go. Now, so now, as I'm moving this forward, it's also pushing things around, right? Just like that, which is looking pretty cool. I can shift these around if I needed to. There we go, push this forward. And now I've got the pumpkin spice latte in the foreground. Now let me actually go back. I'm gonna redo this for a second, just so that we're getting some decent results. I'm gonna ungroup this, put into a group, recipes, there we go. We need XD on the iPad, possibly. I don't think it's in the works, but I've heard mixed things that some designers just wouldn't even bother using XD on an iPad. I would just love Mac OS on an iPad. And with the new chips, it's possible we'll see that at some point in the future. Okay, so stacking on. Here we go. Let's do this again. I'm gonna rotate this about 8 degrees, push it back in space so it's behind some of those objects. There we go. And then grab the pumpkin spice latte and pull it forward. That's looking a little bit better, right? And of course, if you needed to, you can always turn off the stack and move things over manually, just like this. Things snap as you would expect. And now to really give that feeling that this is kind of in this space of augmented reality, I'm gonna drop the opacity of this active layer to about 80%, and these ones here I'm gonna drop to 40%. And if I play this, that's looking pretty good, right? I can also grab these objects, move them back just a little bit. Oops, I selected the wrong thing. There we go. Just so it's kind of nice and flush on that kitchen wall. There we go. Perfect. All right, so we've got this one looking pretty good. And now we want to actually start creating this prototype that allows us to cycle through the various recipes, right? So I'm going to duplicate this artboard over and just start kind of moving things around. So I'm taking a look at this, and it looks like this one, the Z depth is about -58. So I'm going to push this one back. There we go, just like that. I'm going to kind of shift it on over behind this faucet because I do want to create that depth, right? Drop it down to about 40%. Right? There we go. And I'm going to grab the breakfast sandwich, pull this one up, 80%. Look how easy that was, right? Just kind of move things around and everything kind of does what you expect it to do. And I'll just shift this one over, and I'll shift the home icon over. There we go. That looks pretty good. Let's do another one. So I'll bring this back to match the pumpkin spice latte back there. I'll shift both of these over. This one will be 40% and 80%. Home, just like that. And maybe for here, I'll bump this up to 100%, right? So we've basically created the different states. Now, again, states is not officially supported just yet with 3D Transform. So eventually, when hopefully that does happen, we'll be able to create all of this within one larger component. Not yet, though. So let's go ahead and wire this up. Up into prototype mode, I'm going to select the breakfast sandwich because that's the next one we want to cycle to. Drag this over to the next artboard, and let's go ahead, we'll do a tap trigger. Snap might work. We'll try snap. Let's see what that looks like, and maybe 0.4 seconds so it's not too long. Let's take a look. Ooh, not bad. Let's try 0.6. I don't know, is that too slow? Is that too fast? Let me know in the chat. I think that could be okay, but let's go back to 0.4. And here, we'll want to make sure that have all of them, all of them are kind of wired up nicely. So I'll drag this one back. Pancakes, drag back over here. Breakfast sandwich, back over here. And then home, we're actually going to drag it all the way back to the first artboard. So Laura says the third recipe is 100% instead of 80. Ooh, is it? It certainly is. Boop. Now it's 80. Yeah. All right. So here we go. Press play, breakfast sandwich, stacked pancakes, home, right? And you can go back and forth, and all of a sudden you kind of notice how these cards are dipping behind this faucet in the background, right? You may not notice that initially, and I probably could do a little bit better of a job on the extraction, but little things like that, using Photoshop to extract some elements for these experiences, are just gonna really take it home and allow people to kind of look at this and interact with it and feel like it's actually an augmented reality experience. So someone's saying 0.6 is smoother. You might be right. So I have it at 0.4 right now. So I'll dive in here. I'll just select both of these, holding down my Shift key. And change it to 0.6. Let's see what that looks like. That could work, right? Back and forth. And I should probably mention, remember earlier we set up a scroll group. Yeah, Alok is saying smooth, mind blown, looks awesome. I agree. You remember earlier we set up a scroll group, right? So that we can cycle through some of these delicious looking sandwiches in this case. The scroll groups work even on 3D transformed objects. Isn't that cool? It even works on the ones that are not active. So I can bring this forward, scroll through these pancakes, and everything looks incredible. Now, of course, if you did have component states that are not 3D transformed, you can still interact with those, right? But this is looking pretty fancy. I can just do this all day. All right, there we go. So that is the augmented reality experience created in probably about half an hour or so. So I can't even imagine what all of you are going to create when you're spending potentially days on some of these experiences. But a recap of what we've done. Hagen is saying this is how it's done. XD is new to me. I'm fascinated. Yeah, once you really dive into some of these features, you are going to be blown away and really start exploring what XD can do. And again, you know, I'm going to be working on some additional things like this. I'm working with Sam Peterson, who is, I don't think he's in the chat right now, but he's one of the mods. He also streams from time to time. Fantastic illustrator. He's been working on some assets for me to create things. Let me actually ungroup this so I can show you exactly some of the cool things you can do with 3D transforms. I'm going to reset this. So we've got basically here this playing card, right? And what I want to do is start kind of laying these playing cards out on this table or this floor. And this isn't, you know, a full demonstration. It's more of a preview of something much bigger I'm working on. So what I could do is, you know, I could rotate this just like this and kind of pop it on the floor. But what if I wanted additional ones on the side? Now, if I just duplicate this over, it's maintaining the same perspective. So it doesn't look exactly the way it probably would in real life. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to put this into a group. Command and Control G, and I'm going to rotate the entire group just like this. So now it's kind of on the floor like that. Now if I dive into this and I duplicate this, now there we go. Now all of a sudden it's maintaining the perspective of the overall group. So all the cards are looking as you know they should, right? I can push this back in space a little bit. Push that one back in space. And now I've got this kind of cool looking, I can grab both of these, duplicate them over, right? Bring this back a touch. Or maybe I should probably just duplicate this one over here and then duplicate this one over here, right? All of a sudden you've got this really cool looking experience. Does Adobe Dimension is Adobe Dimension just for Mac? No, it's for PC as well. I believe all of our products in the Creative Cloud are cross-platform, Mac and PC. And then from here you can really get creative. You can put things on the back of these cards, right? And then you can do things like, you can rotate these cards, for example. So let's go ahead and move this up a touch. I'm going to rotate this card. Again, this is not a full demonstration, and I don't have anything on the back right now, but you can rotate these things like, right? Do some pretty cool stuff. And then if you go ahead and preview this, I'm going to shoot this over to the right, auto animate. Let's do a nice ease in and out. And there we go, right? Again, You can also put things on the back of the card. You can make it flip around. And I did show an experience at the very beginning of the stream where I kind of recreated the Hearthstone card opening animation, which is kind of where I'm going with something like this. And hopefully I'll be able to provide some of these assets to all of you so you can either follow along or just kind of see it on your own version of Adobe XD. So that is going to do it for me for today. Big thank you to everyone who has tuned in, both on Behance and on Twitter. I have been paying attention to the Behance chat, so next time, if you're watching on Twitter and you do want to chat along, head over to behance.net/live. So we've got Umacorn and Ann and Vincent, Alberto, Kyle, Nimrod, Wade, Laura, Enzo, and everyone else who has joined me over the past hour. I'm going to be back next week, I believe, for another XD Masterclass. We'll dive more into 3D transforms, and we'll just have a good time. If you have any suggestions, send me a tweet at Pinsky, and I can't wait to see all of you next week.